Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to wherever you are in the world. And I hope you're keeping safe, and I hope you're keeping well and your families are well. What we want to do is just give you about in the next 10 or 15 minutes, just a test in terms of how does it feel like to be studying at the University of Southampton and one of the top universities in the world. So this could be one of these part of a session that we may carry. And I'm going to ask you a few questions and a few things as we progress within this 10-15 minutes. So please stay with me and connect with me by answering your questions, answering your queries in the chat box. So let me start with a very simple thing in terms, please connect with me on any of those different social media, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and also Instagram. I do have a WeChat account, which I have not added. So for the Chinese colleagues who are joining us from China today, later on, probably I'll be able to provide you with my WeChat account, but that is just so many numbers, so I don't remember it as easily. Let me start with a very simple query. Imagine a white elephant in the room and think about that I have given you an answer on this slide. The answer is 63%. What could be the question here? Can anyone guess it in the chat box? I would love, we have almost 25 participants right now joining us for this webinar. So I would love to hear from you. If 63% is the question, what is the, if 63% is the answer, what is the question? And Daisy, if you're getting any answers from the chat box, which I am unable to see, could you please let me know? If 63% is the answer, what is this white elephant in the room? These are kind of questions we ask in my lab. So we have a number of PhD students and colleagues working with me on different aspects of things and different research. And one of the things we find is that 63% of people are telling us that they would consciously consume sustainably. Now imagine if you are a manager in a large organization, you are spending significant amount of money for sustainability related aspects. What we find is that 37%, almost 1/3 of people are not really interested in any sustainability. So whatever is going on around in the world with regard to climate change, with regard to all this aspect, what we find is that they don't care. I hope you've heard Michael Jackson. And if you have not heard Michael Jackson today, I would suggest you possibly look into this song called They Don't Really Care About Us from Michael Jackson. And it's worth looking into it. And so what I find is that about 63, but 2/3 of people are saying, okay, we will consume consciously sustainable goods, but 1/3 of the people are not your market. They are just not going to do anything. They don't have anything to do with sustainability. So this is something you have to keep in mind as a manager. Now, let's try and play a guessing game. So all of you, if you can please continue working on that chat box. We are getting some queries, we're getting some answers. So please put this in. It would be great. So imagine what percentage of consumers then would say when we ask them this question. And also we ask this question to people like me, little middle-aged people. And we ask middle-aged people, would you consciously buy from companies that partner with charities and not-for-profit organizations that are making a positive impact on the society? And we found that 43% of them say, you know what? Yeah, we will consciously buy. So about half of them would still not consciously buy. Probably they may unconsciously buy, but consciously buying is about 43%. Okay. And then we changed the question. We said that, say, would you prefer to buy from companies that give something back to the society? So you can see the the change. So in my lab, what we do is we actually use these psychological switches in your mind. And what we try to find is that can a word really change your perception? If you actually see both the question, they are not that different in generic terms. But how do you present your question can actually change how people answer. And if I asked you to guess right now in your own mind, what do you think? How many consumers would there be? Would this be higher than 43%? Would there be lower than 43%? What do you think? What would a middle-aged person say? Let me wait and see if any answers are coming through in the chat box. Please engage, it's perfectly fine. And what we find is this. So Nikki said it was higher. Look, Nikki, what has happened? Almost halved. Just by saying that if you engage with charities and not-for-profit organizations, 43% of people are ready to consciously buy this. And when we change that, just to a question like, would you engage with companies that would give something back to the society? 22%. Boom. Arthkun, thank you very much for your answer. This is what we are seeing, that the changes happen because what you say in your mind with regard to sustainability. So we thought, are these millennials any different? Many of you are millennials, as we call it. So are millennials any different? And there is so much material that is coming up in news media and press saying that millennials are different and millennials do buying differently and so on and so forth. So we asked the same questions to millennials and we said, millennials, tell us about it. So if I can again ask Nikki and Aritkun and others who are joining in, if I ask the first question to the millennials, what do you think would be the percentage? Would it change from 43% to anything else, lower, higher, whatever percentage you think would be the case? Would they consciously buy from companies that partner with charities? These millennials? What do you think? I'm seeing some answers coming through. This is fantastic. And what we find is, Sophie, thank you very much for saying that. Very interesting. Millennials, when you tell them this is the number. So while millennials are being told that they are high on conscious buying and they are high on environmental buying and so on and so forth, what we are finding is not really. I'm sorry to say, if it kind of makes you feel no, I am very consciously buying, ethical buying consumer. Well, the general population is what we are talking about here. And this was done in the UK also. So you may say, oh, UK is different, but UK millennials, that's what we are looking at. And then we asked them the same second question. And what we found was a little different, not really significant, but do they prefer to buy from companies that give something back to the society? So what we find is that we need to find a new way to engage millennials, first of all. That's something new, something different. What you can see is that if you tell an older, so if your target market for your company is older population, you can tell them we connect with this charity or we connect with this not-for-profit organization and they will buy your product. That is how it is. But if you go to millennials, you'll have to think differently. So what we find is that the ethical market is growing across the world, but we need to do more about it. And for that, we kind of kept on doing a lot of studies. So let me give you a little gist of what we did. We find that while consumers do care, they are not naturally altruistic. We are not really altruistic. So if companies do sustainable practices, that doesn't mean we will buy from them. Because we don't buy 100% of all our products from fair trade. We know that. We buy a few chocolates here and there, but that's about it, and we feel good about it. So it is very important to understand this 43, this 22, this 37, 34%, all what we saw was that a large chunk of people are not interested in sustainable consumption. That is the reality. We are not by nature altruistic. And so we are not going to do something very easily for others. That is, or for the companies particularly. That is what it shows up. And so what customers expect of you? Well, we found that what percentage of customers, so we asked this kind of question, what percentage of customers agree that it is important that companies act morally or ethically? And we also asked the question, what percentage of customers agree that boycotting companies that behave unethically is an effective way to make them change? And then if they, so you can see the lettering of these questions. First question we are asking people is that, would you engage with companies that act morally? The next question we ask them is, would you engage would you boycott this company if it behaves unethically? And if would you pay extra if they do ethical business? And if you buy that, would you show pride? And what you see is these percentages. First, if company acts morally, people will think about engaging with them more. But if company does anything unethical, 67% of the people are saying they will go away. They will boycott this company. So you have to be very careful. If you don't do anything ethical, don't do also anything unethical, which is very important. Either you will be boycotted. However, will they pay anything extra? Nope. About suddenly that number drops down dramatically. If you ask that I'm doing something ethical, I'm doing something sustainable, that's why I'll have to charge you a little bit extra, we are not ready to pay. And then if I buy it, will I feel pride? Yes, I will feel pride. So you can see this funny kind of a set which is going on in consumers' mind. They want to engage with sustainable companies. But they don't want to pay many more. And if they buy anything, they want to show it off. This is how we are as human beings. That's why I started with that elephant. Elephant has two kinds of teeth: teeth to chew and a teeth to show. And we are like that. We are double-edged swords. We show something and we do something in our behaviors. So what we started doing was, there is research which we are doing around, how do you make materialistic consumers buy ethical goods? And we found that when you talk about ethical identities, I would have gone much longer in this session in terms of this model, but I'm just showing you the kind of work we do. So we look into this interface between ethical identity and ethical obligations. So if I tell you that you should buy ethical goods because it is your duty, people will buy less ethical goods. But if I tell you that you should buy ethical goods because you are ethical, people will buy more. Just by changing this wording and the framing of these messages, we can find different ways to engage people in sustainable consumption. That's what we are finding. So I'm going to just show you my final slide and just give you a little pointer. This was just a tester session in terms of understanding some of these ideas around sustainable consumption. What I can tell you is, if you are working with a company or if you're planning to work with a company, you can take this home and you can start impressing your managers. First thing, you now know as to what kind of things you can do, what kind of framing you can do to make sure that your customer buys more ethical aspects, more ethical goods from you. And that way you can contribute to the society. So here are a few pointers. The first thing you need to do is, today's consumers, particularly millennials, are very interested in what can you do for them. This is very important. So you have to demonstrate as a company ethical behavior on consumers' behalf. There is a company called Tom's Shoes, worth looking into. When you buy a Tom's shoe, at that point in time, Tom's Shoe as a company would donate another shoe, to a child in Africa. And so what you are doing is, a lot of people are taking pride that I have bought Tom's shoe. Why? Because now, because of my buying, somebody else. So the company has done my task. That is very important to these people. You have to show clear and consistent commitment to these people. What do I mean by that? You have to show purpose focus. I'll give you an interesting example. For example, if some of you within this room who have joined, and there are more than 30 people who have joined now, are interested in knowing, for example, if you're a parent, you are really worried about what you are putting into your kid's mouth. And in that case, Nestle has come forward and actually done something what is amazing. So in France right now, this is going on, that if you buy Nestle's Purees, so these are yogurt based or fruit based purees, which you put into 6 to 8 month old children's mouth. And so on that puree bottle, there is a barcode. And if you scan that barcode, what you can find is that when in which dairy's cow the milk was milk from, not the particular cow, but which dairy was this milk obtained from, where was this yogurt made, in which country, by which company, at what time, at what date, how was it processed, how was it then transferred to a particular particular warehouse, in which warehouse it stayed there for what time, and when it arrived at the retail store, and how much time it has spent on the retail store, and everything. So you can see the full history from milk to the final bottle coming into your hand through this scanning of the app, and it's called blockchain technology. So Nestle is involving into that. You have to engage in this millennials activism, such as, for example, McDonald's in Hyderabad in India. What they did was, in India last year, there were elections. And at that point in time, when the elections were going on, the McDonald's in Hyderabad did an experiment where in India, if you participate in an election, they put on your front finger here, on your nail, a little ink, which doesn't go away for 15 days. So it shows that you have voted. And so when a customer, an adult customer, came into McDonald's without that ink spot, they took away the menu. They said, you do not have today any choices because you are not making a choice in the election. What a powerful mode of way to communicate for people to vote, which is very, very interesting. Similarly, you have to look into this minimalism idea. A lot of millennials are doing a lot of minimalistic activity. They are not as consumerist as their prior generations, it seems. And so you will have to manage their evolving expectations, such as what Unilever is doing with its line called Love, Home, and Planet, which is very interesting, again, worth looking into. There are a number of examples. There are a number of things we will talk about like this on sustainable consumption and many, many other topics. So thank you all very much. I hope you have learned something new. I hope you can take something home today. Thank you.